Question. What one piece of advice would the Judy Heumann of today give to the Judy Heumann who occupied the federal building in San Francisco? And is there anything you would have done differently?
I actually don't know whether we would have done anything differently. I think in the end, we were pretty successful in what we did. And I think we worked pretty effectively with a broad number of organizations. And so I'd have to bring people together who also worked on this at that time to see if they felt there were areas that we missed. I think it was a period of time where we were very fortunate, different times than today.
The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed almost 3 decades ago. If you could add or change one item about the ADA, what would it be and why?
I would change the language they have around personal assistance. In the Americans with Disabilities Act, personal assistance services is not considered to be the same as sign language and services for people who are blind.
Okay.
So if for work, you need assistance getting your coat on and off, or eating your lunch, or going to the bathroom, it is explicitly written that this does not have to be done. So what that has meant for many disabled individuals who have physical limitations is that they either have to not go to the bathroom all day, or they have to figure out other ways to get someone to help them go to the bathroom. And while there have been some changes now under 501, which deals with the federal government and its employees, where it is now something that all agencies are to be building in, it is still not an issue which is dealt with outside of the federal government. So I think, for me, as a disabled person who needs that type of personal assistance in order to be able to do my job, I've been fortunate because I first worked in nonprofit organizations, disabled people's organizations. And obviously that's something that we were building into our organizations. And then I worked in government or in the World Bank, and that was a requirement for me in order to be able to do the jobs that they wanted, that I get that kind of assistance. But for many people, that is not something that they've been able to get. And you hear all kinds of stories about summer interns, for example, having to get their mother or some family person or someone they're paying to help them go to the bathroom, or they just do without. And it's not equivalent to what non-disabled people are expected to do. And it treats, in my view, personal assistance services in a demeaning way. People who provide that kind of support are not considered to be of equal worth to other professionals that work with people with different types of disabilities. And I think it's purely based on discrimination.
That's eye-opening to me. I did not know that. So I appreciate you sharing that. So another ADA question. So even 30 years past ADA, accessible accommodations, to me, they sometimes feel separate but equal, even though they're accessible accommodations. So why do you think our society has been so slow to adopt universal design? And what do you think needs to be done to see these principles applied consistently?
I think many people really, the absence of disability in media really does not allow people to understand the concept of universal design. And now I'm not necessarily talking about lessons on TV about what universal design is. And when you look right now also what's going on with COVID-19, and you see the higher incidence rate of people who are dying in nursing homes and other residential living arrangements, many of these people are moving into these restricted environments because of physical access, lack of physical access where they currently are living or prior to them moving into these facilities, and also the absence of personal assistance services that they can be getting in their home, the ability to get money to make their homes accessible. So the word universal design doesn't mean anything to people. And so, you talk to somebody about universal design, what the heck does that mean?
Right.
Universal Studios, I mean, what does it mean?
Right.
Well, I really feel that it has to be something which is emanating from the community. And it's something where people really, you need to be looking at real live examples to those individual people. And this might really be an opportunity for people to really think about, where do you want to be, as you're getting older, if you need to be making changes. But I think one of the other important issues is, as new housing is being constructed,
Right.
but I think the bottom line is, Justin, that people don't understand what it is. They think about it as something which is related to disability. They're never going to be disabled. That's for somebody else, not for them.
Right. I think that's a great point. One thing that struck me in your book, so despite all of your many accomplishments, and there are so many, you mentioned occasionally that there were periods in your life where you felt insecurity or concerns about being kind of the burden as a result of your own disability. And I've felt that way myself at times, which is why it really spoke to me. When you felt that way throughout your career, even if it was brief, what pushed you through to the other side of that and helped you regain your sense of equality in the room?
Well, I would say there's sometimes where I didn't leave the room feeling that way. I had an incident in one place where I was working, where there were meetings that were being held outside of the organization that I was working for, and you had to go through the kitchen. I had to go through the kitchen in order to be able to get to the room that we needed to go to, and it was something that was happening on a regular basis.
Right.
And I asked that the meeting space that we look for another place, and basically, I was very disappointed because there was no discussion about, the reason we picked this is because they've got great whatever, but we will look for someplace else. It was an outright no. And so I felt good about the fact that I raised the issue. I raised it knowing the answer was probably going to be no, but I raised it because I thought at least some people for a couple of seconds might be understanding that, why am I the only one that has to go through the kitchen?
Right.
If it was racially broken down and, non-whites had to go through the kitchen, it would never have been a site that we would have selected. So, that for me was an area where, no, I didn't completely win. Other places, it's, and I guess win is not the right word, because equity was not achieved. Other times, I have, pushed through and looked at ways of resolving a situation. And I think that's always important too. And I give a number of examples like that in the book, and they kind of go on all the time. So I think for me, it's on a case-by-case basis, really try to address things.
Okay, that's great. What advice would you give to someone who's brand new to a life on wheels and who may be hesitant to accept that change?
Well, first of all, I think if at all possible, speak to other people who are using different kinds of technology to try to be able to see what is out there and what might work the best for you. I would think that's really important. The other thing that may be important to you is, if you're afraid of using the technology, afraid of using the wheelchair, afraid of using the scooter, the company that you're purchasing the product from, see if you can get them to walk with you outside, so you can, be navigating a street or up and down a curb cut or whatever it may be, so you get some level of confidence. And because I think, for me, when I'm afraid of doing certain things, like there was an instance where we got accessible buses when I was living in Berkeley, but we got a bus to come to the Center for Independent Living a number of times so we could allow people to practice getting on and off the bus.
That's great.
And for me, that was really important, because I really did have this fear of what would happen if the bus broke down or the lift broke down and how other people would feel about it.
Right.
And so try to identify people, try to get good assistance, try to be able to use the device that you're getting outside so that you aren't worried about whatever you may be worried about. Talk to people and try to express what your concerns are.
If you had an hour in which you were guaranteed the undivided attention of Congress and the President of the United States, what issues would you discuss and why?
I would discuss the issue of employment. I would discuss the issue of employment because even before COVID-19, we've had great concerns about the fact that our unemployment rate is way too high. I would look at the issue of benefit programs. I would look at those benefit programs as the benefit programs are looked at for disabled veterans, so that I would allow people to get benefits like personal assistance services and technology as something that's not means tested, because I believe if people could get the personal assistance services they needed and wasn't means tested, and they could hire, family members or non-family members, that would make a really big difference also in the area of employment. I think, because benefits that people legitimately need can be so both difficult to get and then so restricting in its adverse impact on your ability to work, I think we need a much more thorough review. And I talk about veterans because disabled veterans get better benefits than civilians. And I'm happy that they get those benefits, but I think they should also be benefits that are the same that a civilian can get. Why do two people have the same disability for the same causes? One person can get a more appropriate services and the other person can't.
That's a great point.
So that would be one area. I think another area that's very important is education. And I do think that also very much links to employment, because the changing world of work, we're still finding that you've got a couple of groups of disabled people. So you've got those people like myself who acquired our disabilities when we were at birth or very early on. We go through the primary, secondary system in the United States as disabled people. And then there are people, how old were you when you had your disability?
I was 22.
Okay, so you were 22. You were out of college or almost out of college?
I was, right.
Okay, so depending on the job that you might have had before, when you became disabled, you may or may not be able to go back to the job that you had before, because you may not be able to do the job before. You may well need to get some more education, or as the world of work is changing, we need to make sure that disabled people, regardless of their age, are able to get the types of training they need to be competitive. So really looking at how is disability being integrated into the workforce and services that people need. And I think the other issue is urban planning and housing. As we were discussing, the need to make sure that new housing is accessible, that money is available for renovations, and that we're putting more money into home and community-based services so that people can stay in their homes as they get older and acquire a disability, or as they're younger and acquire a disability.
As our legislative body, no way representative of the diverse population that it serves, especially true when it comes to physical disability. So why do you believe this to be the case, and what advice would you give to someone living with a disability who is either considering a run for public office or a career in public service?
So I would separate them because I think they're different paths,
right.
Both important. So looking at civil service, again, I would always look at your areas of interest, where the job market is, both in public service and in the private sector. Work to ensure that you are gaining the skills that you need, not only for the job of today, but potentially to be able to move around as jobs change. And I would say that public service is critically important. We need good public servants, and we need public servants that represent the diversity of the community. And so having disabled individuals with different types of disabilities, different racial and ethnic and other orientations, is valuable both for the immediate job that a person is doing and also for the culture within the business or government agency, both on a day-to-day basis, but also for future planning, legislation development, regulations, implementation, and monitoring. The other issue on running for office. So most people don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to go run for X.
Right.
I see most people. And therefore, I think we need to look at what is the type of person that we believe should be serving in various positions, and how do you prepare yourself? And I'm not saying, you inordinately go out and prepare yourself in a way that the average person is going to run for office beyond what they would do. No, but I do think it is really important to understand what you're interested in, what problems you believe need to be resolved, to talk to people in the geographical area that you're interested in representing, getting a better understanding, getting yourself seen and getting yourself knowledgeable by reading up on what the issues are in your community, going to public hearings, becoming an informed person, getting involved in committees, either that exist with the particular government agency, if there are any, but also what political party are you interested in running with, and getting involved with those one of those political parties. And then also really working with the disability community to get them to be a group that clearly understands you're listening to what it is they're saying, you're integrating that into your message. I don't think it's a good thing to be running as a single issue candidate.
Right.
Because, as disabled people, we're not single issued people. We've got gender issues, we've got race issues, we've got disability issues, we've got healthcare issues, on and on, employment issues. So, for me, at least, I want someone who's well-rounded and well-versed. And I think as you're moving forward with this, it's also really getting your local disabled people's organizations and others who are engaging with candidate nights, Meet the Candidates, for example, that everybody is asked a question on disability. It shouldn't be something that only disabled people's organizations are asking questions about. Every organization that's doing this kind of polling needs to ask questions, 1 or 2 questions on disability. Because I think, the candidate may not answer the questionnaire that comes in only from a DPO, but if it's coming in from the Chamber of Commerce or the League of Women Voters or other entities that these individuals know they have to be responsive to because their answers will be published, I think it will make them take our issues more seriously. And I think the other point is, should questions not be specifically looking at the issue of disability, good candidates, if they're going to be coming out with the list of people that they want to ensure are focused on, and that those constituencies see the candidate as someone who's going to be able to represent a broad swath of people, that we want people on their own to be including disability in what they're saying, whether or not they're prompted with a question.
In your book, you stated democracy is slow. The work of a democratic government is supposed to be long and slow and hard. It must be that way. So this truth is obviously compounded by the fact that people with disabilities can sometimes feel disempowered or unable to create change, or they might find it frustrating. So what would you say to a potential advocate who has identified an equality or access issue and wants to create change, but feels like it's impossible to do so, or that it would take too long to do so?
So I think and now I'm obviously just talking for myself.
Right.
But I think in many cases, it's hard to do things by yourself. Some people, maybe not, you're great. You're going to go out there and fight the battle yourself, and maybe you'll be successful. But I think when we're talking about systemic related issues, that it's always valuable to be able to get other people who you can be working with. When we look at the changes that have been made over even before the ADA, when we look at what we had to do to get the ADA and to get the 504 regulations, it wasn't because one person here and one person there did something. It was because we were able to come together as a group of people. And when you look at laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act, one of the really important aspects of why that law came to be is because we were able to demonstrate to congresspersons and senators that discrimination was not something that was isolated. It was something that occurred in all states and in all parts of the states, and against people with all types of disabilities. So, they were able to acknowledge that discrimination did exist, that it rose to the level where the federal government needed to intervene. And then as individuals and as groups working together, we were able to also help craft language that would ensure that once the law was implemented and the regulations promulgated, that we would be able to see changes. Now, the changes that we've seen that have been, in my view, most successful have been those that deal with the physical environment, right? Standards, oversee the standards, get things done. Issues like employment discrimination have been slower because it's not a cookie cutter approach. And because the way the system is, it's pretty much, I believe I've been discriminated against, I need to file a complaint.
Right.
So I think there we're talking about needing to make sure people understand what the law says and doesn't say, be able to think as critically as possible to determine whether you think filing a complaint makes sense. Do you believe that certain things occurred where you can demonstrate discrimination?
Right.
But again, I think frequently the more people can do, not by themselves. I'm really not saying never by yourself. Something happens to you personally, you need to deal with it. But for more systemic related issues, I think working with larger numbers of people in the end will allow us to be more successful.
Right. And just very briefly, what would be the best channels through which our readers could follow your work? And also, where might our viewers or readers purchase your book?
So the book can be purchased, and it's now also out on Audible. It came out May 19th on Audible. Ali Stroker, the actress with the disability, she read the book, and so you can get it on Audible. And the book itself you can get on Amazon, Indie. Go to your local bookstore, which really could use your business now, or Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, The Human Perspective, or on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Fantastic. Judy, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we hope to keep in touch and please continue your work. We're all counting on you and we're all learning from you. So thank you for everything you've done.
So I want to thank you very much, because I count on you and your audience and others, because none of us can do things, as I've been saying, by ourselves. It really is something that we have to do collectively. And now with COVID-19, ever more important that we're really engaging the media, that we're really speaking up and out, not just about our individual stories, but to really, as budgets are going to be developed with the economic problems that we're now facing, right, more than ever, we're really going to have to look broader at what we need to do to ensure that we're not more adversely affected. So thank you very much, Justin.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.